Hi, everyone. Courtney and Michael Chankis here with Charles Ruttenberg Realty in Lakewood Ranch, Florida. Today, we have a very special guest joining us. You'll see another person on the screen. This is Courtney Grandstrand. Great name, by the way. She's here to talk about Florida insurance with us today, which is a very hot topic, and we're excited to get into it. So, Courtney, tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Yeah, so I am an independent broker in the state of Florida. Florida's complex enough, so we just keep it with that. I do have a background in real estate as well. So I was in Texas for 4 years before I actually transitioned to Florida and started to go in insurance. And it's actually kind of cool. I know before I moved to Florida, I actually found you guys on YouTube, and that's how I got familiarized with the Lakewood Ranch area. So it's full circle moment.
I love it. That's
Another
great.
one. Another one. Okay, cool. So insurance in Florida is a very hot topic right now. I mean, obviously it's a given. It's always been around, but it's really a buzzword at the moment. So we figured we have questions, the general public has questions, and why not talk to the expert?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So if you don't mind, can we just throw some questions that we came up with that we think not only to educate us, but will educate the consumer as well?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
All righty, here we go. In no particular order. All right. Right now, there's a misconception, I think anyways, confirm or not, that insurance in Florida is completely unaffordable. And that's something that we hear a lot. So what's your take on that? Because I think that's the hottest topic at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a question I'm asked a lot as well. So I would say it's a misconception, which is great news.
Okay.
So I see what happens to a lot of out-of-state buyers. They're talking to maybe a certain carrier that is more familiar with their state, and they don't have the options to review that they have. You know, in Florida, it's very specific carriers that compete here. So they might be calling State Farm or Allstate, and that's when you see them getting these quotes for $15,000 to $30,000. That's unaffordable, right? Yeah. So when they actually shop with an independent broker that's specific to Florida, we're able to review the best options. So I would say maybe in like the last year or so, just like an average typical home, maybe plan for around the $3,000 range, which is a lot better than those $30,000 quotes that you do hear of people getting. And
right.
I've heard 70,000 plus even. So hopefully that helps most people feel a little bit more comfortable about the pricing.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what we thought too. All right, so we are in an area well, for people who don't know, Lakewood Ranch, we're in Manatee County and Sarasota County, Florida, West Coast, an hour south of Tampa, just so that people have a frame of reference. Now, obviously, you work throughout the entire state, but that's where we are, just to give a frame of reference. A question that people often have, what's the difference insuring an older home, say built in 1997, versus something that's built now or is only 2 or 3 years old?
Yeah, so the thing that's great with Lakewood Ranch, you are seeing a lot more of those newer construction homes, and most carriers do have an appetite for those newer homes. They're seen as less risk. So you're going to see cheaper premiums for the most part versus an older home that might be subject to, you know, like water leaks or just more plumbing problems, or things are more likely to go wrong. You have the older roofs, and that's when you start to see maybe a little bit more expensive premiums. So definitely the newer homes are expected to be a bit cheaper.
Okay.
Good.
That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Another benefit, at least right now in Lakewood Ranch, is that all of the homes are in flood zone X, which, as we know, is like the least risk of a flood in this area.
Right.
But there are rumors that in the future, every home in Florida could require flood insurance. So from your perspective, is that something you think will happen in the future, or?
So there's only one carrier right now that is requiring flood insurance, and it's dependent on how much the home is actually insured for. So Citizens, I'm sure some may have heard of it. Citizens is basically our state insurance company that is there as the last resort. So for these harder to insure homes where you just might not have many options available, Citizens is usually always available as long as the home is in good condition. So they're the only carrier right now that actually has these flood requirements already in effect. So by 2027, it will be true. All Citizens policies will be requiring policyholders to carry flood insurance.
Okay. And would you consider Citizens like almost like a last resort type provider if you can't get insurance elsewhere, or what?
Yeah,
What is that?
absolutely. So that's when, if you have like an older roof, they're more likely to take it as long as, it meets certain requirements. They're just looking for basically the roof has 5 years remaining life deemed by a home inspector. So that's more, you're going to see the older homes and the older roofs go with Citizens, and they are a last resort. So a couple years ago, we had a very tough insurance market. We're actually heading to a very positive direction. So Citizens, basically what happened with the carriers, a lot of them put such strict guidelines that for a while we've seen most carriers not want to write homes that were over 1 year old. And so
Wow.
we're placing all these newer homes with Citizens, and that's not what they were put in place for. So they got overwhelmed with policies that really they're not meant for that. So they're going back into this position called being the last resort.
Right. Okay.
So it's good that's getting more regulated again.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. You just mentioned home inspector, so we had that jotted down here.
Hot topic in insurance.
Yeah. So when we work with a buyer, they'll talk to a home inspector, and the home inspector will give them a list of options of what type of inspection they want done. And they always say to us, usually, hey, they're offering a 4-point inspection. Do I need that? So what types of home inspections are necessary on the insurance level? Are they necessary? Like, how does that all work?
Yeah, so we have 2 reports that are going to be required for insurance. If the home is over 20 years old, you should be getting a 4-point inspection. Very rarely, there's some carriers that require a 4-point, no matter how new the home is, just because they want to see the roof condition.
Okay.
And so I would say, as a general rule, if the home is 20 years or older, get a 4-point inspection. If it's a newer home, most inspectors are pretty good about taking the notes for a 4-point. So if you end up having to go back, like say review the options and the best carriers, this one that just requires a 4-point, hopefully the inspector has the information so they can just quickly put the report together without actually having to go back out to the property.
Okay.
And then the other report is the wind mitigation report. This is only required for homes that are built before 2002. So anything 2002 and newer, you don't have to worry about the wind mitigation. Those credits are going to be automatically factored in.
Okay.
Great. That's super helpful.
So that right there saves the client, the buyer, money. You mentioned the 4-point. I mentioned the 4-point. Can you elaborate on what that means? Because probably people don't know.
Yeah, so the 4-point inspection is going over 4 main components of the property. So it's going over your roof, HVAC, electrical, and plumbing. And they're looking for certain brands, especially with electrical panels that are ineligible with most carriers. They're looking at the plumbing material and the age and the condition of all of those components, just to ensure that everything is in good condition.
Okay.
And then if anything on that report comes in, as a deficiency, that has to be repaired, most likely for every company before the home closing actually takes place.
Okay.
So the one component on that can be a little bit more lenient, again, you're going to be limited most likely with Citizens on this, is the roof. So if it's an older roof and it can't get replaced until after closing, you're probably going to have to end up with Citizens just to allow for that roof replacement to be afterwards.
And that's something we're seeing, like roofs that are 20 plus years old. We're on these older homes, we're seeing that becoming an issue with deals. So it's something to keep.
So at least you do have an option for it to be replaced. And the rule with that is that it must be replaced within 60 days after closing.
Okay.
Okay.
Very cool. All right.
Good to know.
Let's see what's next. Let's talk about, because we are entering hurricane season.
Oh, we're here. We're in it.
We're entering it. We had a lovely day yesterday of like 10 inches of rain out of the blue.
Rainfall, like records broken.
We did need it, but it was a bit much.
It was a fun day yesterday after having like 2.5, 3 months of no rain. But
I mean, we needed it.
We needed
a lot at once. Yeah.
maybe if they spread it out a little.
Yeah.
Anyway, hurricane coverage. Go.
I know it's a
Broad.
Yeah, that's a vague question, but no, we get it a lot. Like, how does that work, and do you need it, and is it something you add on, or?
Yeah, so hurricane is going to be part of mostly every single standard home policy that you see. It'll be hurricane, wind, and hail coverage, all pretty much into one. So hurricane will be included, and some carriers do have the option to exclude wind coverage. I do not recommend that. I don't think it's a great idea, but you do have the option to exclude it if it's one of those cases where you are needing to meet a very low premium to meet a DTI or whatever it may be. But most loans will require hurricane coverage. It just kind of all goes into one as a windstorm.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Did we talk about flood insurance? Did we want to? Yeah,
yeah.
we hit that. No, okay.
Yeah.
See, don't remember things. It's how we talked about the affordability. So we have some folks that like to buy condos and rent them out like an Airbnb, or they're buying this home as investment. They don't intend to live in it as their primary. There's a difference in the insurance product versus a primary versus a rental. What does that look like, and what could they expect?
Right. In terms of pricing, or like the price differences on like
Price
primary
differences, and just
landlord.
what level of liability you probably want to increase and cover yourself for, because you have a tenant in there, and that's just
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually a really good point to bring up. With tenants, especially short-term rentals and Airbnbs, your exposure is a lot broader. With the short-term rentals, you just have more people in there, more things happen, more people might try to take advantage of the situation. So usually what we recommend, there's going to be a limit on any kind of standard landlord policy. Usually we see 300,000 as the highest liability option that there is. But especially with short-term rentals, we try to bring up getting either an excess liability or an umbrella. So you have an additional $1 million worth of coverage is what the recommendation is from even most insurance lawyers in the situations that they see in claims situations.
Okay. And this is a generalization. Maybe it's not an easy answer, but are you talking 2 times the cost versus primary, 3 times? Like how much of a difference?
Landlord, and again, depending on if it's like an annual rental, those are going to be a little bit more similar to your primary rates. So a lot of ones like call in, hey, if we decide to rent it out, what's this cost going to look like? I would say it's a pretty safe assumption that it's going to be near your primary rate. So a lot of them are surprised maybe it's even a couple hundred less, but it's going to be very close. When it comes to weekly and short-term rentals, those are a little bit more limited as far as the amount of carriers that offer them. And then also depending on where it's located, you're most likely going to see the weekly rentals on the barrier islands. And so again, just depending where you're looking at, that's when you're going to see a higher range in that. And then liability policy, you can expect to be around, for sure, under $1,000 for the year if you want that extra $1 million worth of protection. So it's generally very worth to get that additional protection for liability.
Yeah, agreed. Okay. We talked about ballpark costs. Let's see. How about this one? Yeah.
Okay. So if someone is looking to get an insurance policy and they call you, what does that process look like on your end from start to finish? And, just kind of a general timeline or synopsis of what they have to do.
Yeah, because usually people save it till the very last minute, and I think that's a mistake.
Absolutely, especially if there's repairs that need to be done before closing and they had no idea they would need a 4-point inspection. So I've seen delays when they call me the day before closing, and it's not a situation you want to be in.
Right.
So yeah, once we get the call, it's usually a very quick discovery call, I call it. It's maybe 5 minutes max. I'm just getting your general information, like your name, date of birth, address, your targeted closing date, everything like that. And then as long as the inspections are ready, if they're needed, I try my best. I can safely promise you it's a same day quote, unless it's like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon and have too many to get back to. It's the next day. And then I like to set up a call once I email the quote over. Sometimes I give a few options if they're all kind of coming in close, and then we'll go over and customize over the phone, because maybe they might want more coverage. Maybe they say, we don't need this much. So we customize everything exactly to meet every client's needs and wants. And then especially going over deductible options, there's many optional coverages that might be available. So yeah, it's a pretty quick process as long as everything's in order. Okay. And then we're able to bind a policy up as long as you say, okay, we can have the binder ready to your loan officer or back to the evidence of insurance back to your email within an hour.
Okay.
It is quick.
And how soon ideally should people get that sorted? And
as soon as you're under contract, reach out for insurance.
Okay.
And then that way we can also advise if the 4-point or wind mitigation might be a good idea to have if they have additional questions about that. Okay.
Now, here's another thing. The cost of insurance, it went up like everything else in the world, it seems. But it's definitely impacting people whose budgets, are X and they have to stay within this amount for their monthly payment and the escrow and everything else. So is there a way, without sending you through all the quoting process and everything over and over and over again, for people to at least get a rough estimate if they're considering 4 or 5 properties? Is there a way for them to estimate what that cost may be, and that would help them decide which property to choose to buy?
Yeah, so there's not really, that's the thing that makes it tough. There's not really a good way to get just a rough estimate, but I have been able to sort of advise clients. And again, even a zip code can change. Sometimes you just have no idea.
Right.
But I would say I've given tips on what to look for in a home that would just have a better rating in general, such as masonry versus frame home. If you're looking at a 2-story and the second story is frame and the bottom's masonry, they're still going to count that property as a frame home. And that's going to be a little bit more expensive. Mm-hmm. And then you can also look at roof shape. I don't know how detailed you want to get into roof shapes, but a hip roof is just like your basic, like four sides on the, the roof. And then the gable is just 2 sides, if that makes sense. So the hip roof is going to have a better rating when it comes to insurance than, the gable roof. And then also be looking at newer homes. Those are most likely going to be cheaper versus your older homes are going to be a little bit more expensive. And then like Lakewood Ranch is actually a very, very good appetite for the carriers. It's cheaper rates than near the coast. So if you know you're going to be very tight on insurance, try to look in these more suburban inland homes.
Yeah,
more inland.
Yeah, that's what we've seen as well.
Mm-hmm.
The policies really are overall reasonable. The only policies we've seen that are like high would be $5,000 or $6,000 a year, and they're in River Club. They're closer to the Braden River. They're older homes. There's all these factors that are making that.
Right. There's a lot of variables that go into ratings, but newer home, Lakewood Ranch area inland is going to be definitely more desirable.
Okay.
All the more reason to move here.
Right.
Exactly. You guys are in the perfect location.
Yeah.
It has served us well. And even through the hurricanes, we've, knock on wood, everything's been good here.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Speaking of hurricanes, I did have one question circling back to the timing of getting the insurance. There is a time frame before closing if a hurricane comes that you can no longer get insurance locked in. Is that correct?
So if a hurricane is expected to hit, or even if it's across the state, carriers go on moratoriums, meaning that most of them can't even quote when they know a hurricane is coming. They shut down all the systems. We cannot bind insurance. So that's why it's extra important to start shopping and bind your insurance as soon as possible, especially if you're trying to meet a specific closing date.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And they will shut down for about a week. And then sometimes it takes days for them to open up after the hurricane hit. And then something severe like Hurricane Ian, a lot of companies took months to open back up. Yeah. And that was a very tough time. So hopefully this season's not as bad as they're predicting, because that could change the direction we're going in as well.
Yeah, let's hope not.
You never know. And do you see obviously the pricing of insurance got higher, so people see that as a negative, but and I know you don't have a crystal ball, but do you think we've reached like a plateau? Do you think prices will ease up, or where do you see the insurance market? And it's okay to say I don't know.
Yeah, so not that I see it really going down, because again, everything is going up. Cost of material and labor is going up. So that's another reason why the insurance is going up. But as far as comparing it to where we were a couple of years ago, we've actually had 10 carriers announce that they have a 0% increase for renewal. And then some are actually offering rate decreases. We're heading in a very positive direction, thankfully, to the new laws that were passed at the end of 2022 that made assignment of benefits illegal, as well as the word of attorney laws. So that helps carriers, it lessen their risk, basically, of losing, money to especially fraudulent claims. Mm-hmm. So we've had more carriers enter our market. They have loosened up on the guidelines. And as far as rates go, I think we've somewhat hit a plateau, hopefully.
Yeah.
I think hopefully like the rate increases have slowed down a little bit, if anything.
Yeah. I just tell people that my crystal ball's broken and I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. Any other questions you can think of?
I don't think so. I feel like that was everything we had kind of thought of.
Anything on your end that you
Not that I can think of. I think that was a really good
I have one.
range of questions. Sure.
I have one. Is it insurance or insurance? Because I hear both ways and I don't know.
Just depending on what part of the country you're coming from, I guess.
Yeah.
I think I even kind of switch up the way I say insurance. Yeah, I mean, I switch it up even. So
It's
Well, 'cause
got
if you're insured, then you put that, right? But then like
yeah,
insured,
insured.
I don't know. Okay. Potato, potato.
Exactly. And I hear some people, depending on the part of the country, they just say Shants. I've heard that even.
Really?
So,
I haven't had
and they
that.
don't even realize that they're saying it. They just like Shants.
Shants.
Yeah,
Sounds
that's
like
a
your
new one.
cousin that lives out in the east. Yeah. Shants. Well, I think that was extremely helpful. How
Good.
can people reach you if they want to get an insurance quote well in advance of their closing date?
Sure. So give me a call or email. If you want to share my information in the description, that might be easier. Yeah, but definitely give me a call anytime. And then I'm also happy to help provide insight if clients do have additional questions. I know the out-of-state ones especially. But also I'll leave with this. Florida is actually heading in a very positive direction. I've seen states like Louisiana, Texas, California, they're running into the problems that we had years ago with the amount of natural disasters they have happening to them. I know especially Texas has had tornadoes and it's been awful for them. So their insurance market, I would say, is getting a little bit even more out of control than, thankfully, the market we have now in Florida. So I would say all the misconceptions about Florida insurance being unaffordable or, no one's going to insure my house. Those are all just rumors and misconceptions at this point. So I wouldn't be too worried about it.
Yeah, the media loves to find a way to spin negative on Florida.
I know. I'm shocked that sometimes I hear the clients calling me and they're scared about what they saw in the news. And like, that's totally false. So hopefully this video helps provide us a little bit more comfort and the ability to obtain insurance.
Breaking the myths.
Yeah, we're breaking the myths. And honestly, this was helpful for us because, you're the professional when it comes to insurance. We know just enough to
advise
people to call the person who actually knows all the real answers. So this was extremely helpful for us as well.
Good. Yeah, I'm happy to help. I love talking insurance. So call me anytime.
Insurance, she said. Insurance.
Insurance.
I did.
All right, we'll sign off. She's the queen of signing off on our video.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Courtney, for joining us today to share so much insightful information. If you have additional questions about insurance, we'll leave Courtney's information in the description. You can contact her directly. And if you're looking to buy a house in Lakewood Ranch and get a great insurance quote, contact us first. We'll help you find the house. And then we'll hook you up with Courtney. Courtney.
Can't beat a team like that.
Yeah, it's a great team. So thanks again for watching. Come back and tune in again. And we appreciate it.
Thank you again.
Signing off.
Bye-bye.
Don't forget to come back for more video updates, and if you want to keep watching, click the More Videos button here for a playlist of all things Lakewood Ranch.